Hello, and thank you so much for joining me on Climate Check. I'm your host, Mary Mwekisa. Now, COP29 is around the corner, and it starts on the 11th of November to the 22nd of November 2024, and it will be held in Baku, Azerbaijan. And of course, as a country, Zambia has been preparing for this event so that we speak one voice, even as various stakeholders gather in Baku. And so on the program today, we'll be finding out what the Zambia Climate Change Network, ZCCN, has been doing to prepare for COP29, as well as we will understand the policy framework that governs climate action in Zambia. Join me on the other side. Now imagine if trees could provide Wi-Fi, just how many trees you would plant? Well, they provide oxygen. We definitely cannot do without it. Destruction of nature, such as forests, has led to irreversible climatic changes to our world. Join me as I talk to policy formulators, change makers, and climate change interest groups on Climate Check, weekly on this channel. Now you are the solution to climate change. Welcome back. Now, Climate Check is brought to you courtesy HIVOS Southern Africa with its alliance partners on the VCA project. And now we start by understanding the policy framework that governs climate action in Zambia. And I'll be talking to Dr. Kabwe Mubanga, who is a climate change specialist as well as a senior lecturer at the University of Zambia School of Geography and Environmental Studies Department. And he'll be talking to us about the policies that govern climate action in Zambia. Doc, it's always a pleasure to talk to you on Climate Check.
Thank you so much, Madam Mary. Pleasure is mine.
All right, let's first understand the type of policies that govern climate action in Zambia or that facilitate climate action in Zambia.
So currently, I think the biggest one we are working with is the National Policy on Climate Change. I think we did that one in 2016. Mm-hmm. Of course, I have to mention that the government has been working on the Green Economy and Climate Change Bill, mm-hmm. which I think is at a very advanced stage. Very likely we are possibly going to see this one in action either end of the year or early next year. So these are major policies that govern everything we do and implement when it comes to climate change. Mm-hmm. But other than this, we have also legal documents that govern what we do. For instance, the National Adaptation Plan, which was done and launched in 2023 last year. This one also helps us to identify particular actions that can help us to adapt to the changes we've already seen in climate. We understand that because of the size of the climate system, if we see changes, we'll continue being with them for a long time, maybe 30, 50 years.
Yes.
So we need an action of how we are going to live with those changes, hence the National Adaptation Plan. But we also know that we need to be reducing the emissions that we put into the atmosphere, even as we are living with the changes. So we have an NDC document and an NDC implementation plan that was also done last year.
Okay.
That helps us with the mitigation side of climate change. But of course, there are also adaptation co-benefits within the NDC implementation plan. But these are some of the major documents we work with, in addition to the 8th National Development Plan, mm-hmm. the Green Growth Strategy, and a few more.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the climate change policy. 2016, 2024, isn't it about time we re-looked into this document to respond to the current needs?
It actually is. And I think this is something that is already going on. The revision is already being done. I'm aware of that.
Okay.
But even as it is, I can just get into a bit of details to support what you are saying. I think by 2016, a lot of issues, a lot of conversations that have gone on at international level were not yet there, or at least had not reached a peak. Mm-hmm. This time around, we are talking a lot about carbon markets.
Yes.
In 2016, we were not so much talking about that. So considering those changes and those conversations that have gone on, it is important to actually revise the document. We are now talking about loss and damage. We are talking about the global goal on adaptation. All these are conversations that have come up since 2016. And so we needed to revise this document so that we are up to date with the global conversations, but also we are able to structure the institutions to be able to manage these global conversations. For instance, when it comes to, say, aspects of carbon markets, we need institutions that should be able to coordinate aspects of carbon markets. We need to understand, or we need to develop a framework that is going to help us understand entry into carbon markets and the benefit sharing mechanisms for carbon markets. So there was need to revise these documents from 2016 so that we can incorporate all these conversations that have come up since then.
Now we're dealing with a drought, or at least we can say we're still experiencing the impact of the drought, even as we were talking right now. How have these policies assisted in the response to this situation for various sectors?
Yeah, they have been very useful. Of course, we also have to take into consideration that, for instance, the National Adaptation Plan is only about a year old. So the implementation aspect is actually something that is ongoing. In fact, the funding part of this might not even have reached a stage where we are going to see a lot of actions from this. But just having a plan in place is something that is useful. And particularly the way adaptation, which is an important part of managing droughts, was done, much of this was attached to district development plans, the IDPs. So it means when the IDPs are being implemented, even the adaptation plans are being implemented. But specifically when it comes to droughts, yes, we had gone way deep into messing up with our water resources, so we ended up seeing the effects that we've seen in the energy sector. But there's already an existing plan from the National Adaptation Plan that could help us manage some of these issues in future. Take, for instance, if we identified areas of ecological importance, such as wetlands, and protect those. And this is something that the National Adaptation Plan actually emphasizes on. We identify these areas, the recharge zones, the wetlands, develop what are called environmental floors. These are water levels that we can't go below, no matter what. So what will happen is, if in case we had reduced rainfall, some of these waters that have been reserved somewhere are going to find themselves into the major rivers, and we are not going to have the effect we have, let's say, in energy. So some of these are adaptation measures that have been put in place. Another thing we can talk about are the nature-based solutions that are also an aspect that is brought out in the National Adaptation Plans. These nature-based solutions help us to live with the environment in a sustainable manner. Agroecology, we can talk about, is one of those. But at the same time, recharging water naturally, instead of allowing it to be drained off through runoff, maybe by digging trenches or just identifying areas where this water can sink. All of these adaptation techniques can help us to survive when we have aspects of drought.
Now, in the process of formulating some of these policies, how much community involvement is considered? Because at the end of the day, when we're implementing some of these policies, we find ourselves right in these communities and making people now buy into this document that they may not understand.
And that's actually very important. Climate change is a very technical conversation. So one way or another, when you're bringing it to the communities and on the ground, it needs to be broken down and explained so that people can have inputs. Of course, no matter how complicated it is, if a drought comes, even the locals will be affected, and they will understand that there is no rain. So when developing most of these policies, and I can give an example of the National Adaptation Plan, which I was a part of, there was a lot of community engagement, and the engagement started at district level all the way to national level. Even when the document was done, we still had to go back to the communities to try and find out, is what we have put in this document what you actually want to see? So community engagement and stakeholder consultation has actually been going on and happening at that particular level for us to come up with these documents. Of course, there's always room to do better.
Yes.
Because it's not always easy that you are going to reach even the last person on the ground. But fortunate enough for us, there are structures that have been identified, particularly in the 8th National Development Plan and the Urban Planning Act,
yes,
where we have the WDCs which come actually right from the communities. And we have instances where these WDCs are able to actually have inputs into the documents we are dealing with. That means we are able to get actually the contributions all the way from the ground to the national level and into these policies.
Now, the Zambia Climate Change Network, ZCCN, yesterday held an event, a pre-COP29 event, where their members, these are civil society organizations, gathered and came up with one position paper, which will be presented to government as a position for civil society organizations in Zambia as the country participates at COP29. Zachariah Tawanda Nyimbili, our staffer, attended the event and brought us this clip.
As Zambia prepares to participate at the 29th Climate Change Conference of Parties, also known as COP29, in Baku, Azerbaijan, civil society organizations are mobilizing to ensure that the voices of grassroots communities hardest hit by climate change are amplified. At a preparatory meeting held in Lusaka, stakeholders discussed a national roadmap that will support inclusive participation of civil societies organizations, CSOs, in United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC processes. Zambia Climate Change Network, ZCCN board chairperson, emphasized the need for climate finance.
It is imperative that we prioritize the following key issues. Number one, climate finance. Scaling up climate finance. We must secure substantial and predictable climate finance to support adaptation efforts in Zambia and also across Africa. There is also the matter of operationalize, thank you, the loss and damage fund, which was put in place last year. And making this fund operational is critical to providing financial support to vulnerable communities affected by climate-induced disasters. We've seen what has happened in now, and we need money to be able to assist communities that are experiencing loss and countries that are also affected by climate-induced disasters.
Civil society organizations have a role to play in addressing the impacts of climate change. Now let's get to find out their reactions. What are they hoping to achieve? What is the hope for Zambia? Is COP29 a turning point for Zambia in addressing impacts of climate change?
This COP29 for this year, we are looking at the key issues that will be input to the Zambia position paper, so that once the team goes, negotiates on behalf of our country, Zambia, and the people that they are negotiating for are indeed the people at the community level.
I think the idea is that we need to make sure that the people who are representing us are speaking the language that we understand. They're talking to the needs that we want to see in the sector, addressing challenges, in particular with regards to financing for climate resilience initiatives, for renewable energy initiatives, for building sustainable wash systems here in Zambia. We need to ensure that the people who are representing us at COP29 who are speaking on our behalf are speaking that the language that we understand and addressing the needs that we have as a country. So we're very excited that ZCCN has taken this opportunity to bring different CSOs together to sit in one room to discuss what the position for Zambia is as we go into COP29.
As the country steps up its preparatory efforts for COP29, civil society's organization remain united in their pursuit for inclusive climate action, determined to drive forward a national agenda that amplifies grassroots perspectives and prioritizes resilience, building for the nation's most vulnerable. Zakaria Nyembele for Climate Check.
And now, joining us in studio is Mr. Simon Mwamba, who is a ZCCN member as well as lead climate resilience at Family Development Initiative. He was one of the civil society organizations representative who attended the pre-COP meeting organized by ZCCN, and we engage him on some of the key takeaways at this event. Thank you so much for making time.
Mary, it's a pleasure to once again be on your program.
Now, yesterday, civil society organizations, of course, who are the members of ZCCN, including yourself, participated in a pre-COP meeting preparing for COP29 in order for you to give us a position as a country for civil society organizations in Zambia. What are some of the takeaways from that meeting?
Well, the key takeaways are that during the meeting, we focused firstly on finance, which is a key issue because this COP is called the financing COP.
Yes.
So we focused on finance. Then there was the issues of focusing on loss and damage as well. But also key to this issue is the issue of actually improving or increasing the ambitions. But under this, we decided to focus on our key thematic areas that ZCCN works on, and these are energy, where on the energy issue, we were looking at how do the energy crisis that we have be one of the key messages that Zambia takes to the COP, both for financing, which is a key issue, and for the issues of loss and damage, because ultimately, what has been the loss and damage to the economy?
As a result of the energy crisis.
The energy crisis. How has the energy crisis come about? It's drought, and this drought is linked to climate change. And with this, we have other sectors that are also affected. And among the other key sectors that we have is actually water and sanitation. And that many times you would find that having worked in this sector of the environment for more than 24 years now, we have realized that the issue of environment and climate change, mostly it has been those who are environmentalists and those who work in agriculture, those who work in forestry that have had these concerns. But then as ZCCN, there has been this focus on water and sanitation. And during yesterday's meeting, we managed to say, okay, not only from the members, but we had to bring other partners like the NGO WASH Forum. Because then we need to be reaching out to other stakeholders at national level who are experts in their own field, but that we share notes. And on the water and sanitation issues, critical issues also came out, because look at, not only are we talking of underground water dry, but because of the energy crisis, access to water has been impacted. And through this, how can Zambia build a case when we are talking of what case are we taking to the COP? So water and sanitation becomes an issue, because without access to water, sanitation becomes an issue. For those that have toilets that need water, then you are in trouble if you don't have the water. But then when you are looking at the water, it is on two areas. So when you have a drought, there's a way people's access to water is affected. And this is then later linked to the issue of health. So health was another issue that was discussed. And then under health, you'd see that there are linkages to water, but there are also linkages to how climate change impacts. For instance, if you have a flash flood, or a heavy storm. We have heard of hospitals whose roofs have been blown off. So when you are looking at the health infrastructure, how is it being affected by climate change. And the cases that we have are many that we have seen. And therefore, under health, which other diseases, because people only talk about malaria, as usual, diarrhea, cholera. But then
There's more.
there is more to it,
Yes.
respiratory diseases.
Yes.
And I think in the discussions we had yesterday, people were also asking, how come this time around we are having stress-related cases? People who don't have BP, but AFA, all of a sudden. So when you have heat stress, high temperatures constantly, it's also part of what is there in the National Adaptation Plan. And these things are already highlighted in terms of what the crisis level, in terms of how can these be affected. So health was one of the sectors.
Talk to me about agriculture and food security.
Actually, that's what I was coming to. It's the next among the 4 issues that were discussed. It's about agriculture and food security. And this time we are not only talking about agriculture and food security because of the drought and because of this, it's also the interlinkages with the other sectors. So when you are talking about agriculture, you are linking it to water. When you are talking about agriculture, you're also linking it to health. Because ultimately, the drought situation that we have, the reality on the ground is that you'd find government is providing relief food. But is that relief food nutritious enough? So you are linking the issues of how climate change is affecting the agriculture sector, not only in the reduction of the tons that the country expected or the harvest losses that the farmers have incurred.
Yes.
So these issues are critical because we were linking each of these on how they were interconnected and how we build then a case. And based on this, civil society position paper is now being finalized and consolidated to be given to government. Because when we go as African, these developed countries, and talk, we must have a case to show. Our colleagues from the other regions, like those from island states, the small island states, they are able to talk about the increasing water levels, and they build a case, and they are able to say, our country would be normal. But for us, what case are we taking? And that is critical as a country.
So at the end, as I let you go, at the end of the COP, what kind of messages, what kind of decisions are you anticipating to hear as civil society organizations?
One is that even if the focus has been on increasing the ambition, increasing the ambition without finance is a non-starter for us. Because for the adaptation measures, for the mitigation measures to be done, we need finance. And with finance, as civil society, we need to see the commitments. The last COP, we saw commitments on loss and damage. But to this level, what framework are we going to use? So key to this is the framework for funding of the loss and damage issue, because that is critical. And one of the critical issues also for civil society is the just transition. Because when you talk about the energy sector, when you talk about the productive sectors and all these sectors that are affected, the transition must be just. It shouldn't be abrupt, and it shouldn't be that where people are forced. So a just transition is the one that will promote climate justice. And this linked to financing is that the polluter must pay. So those countries that are polluting more must commit to ensure that the finances that they declare or pledge are actually fulfilled, yes.
This is Climate Check. We take a short break. Join us on the other side. Now imagine if trees could provide Wi-Fi. Just how many trees you would plant? Well, they provide oxygen. We definitely cannot do without it. Destruction of nature, such as forests, has led to irreversible climatic changes to our world. Join me as I talk to policy formulators, change makers, and climate change interest groups on Climate Check, weekly on this channel. Now you are the solution to climate change. we've come to the end of this week's edition of Climate Check. Do make a date with me next week, same time, same channel, as we bring to you more information around climate action, climate mitigation, and climate adaptation. Thank you so much for watching. Do have a good one, and you take care of the environment. Goodbye.